starting with observation of a book as a whole, the general materials. What's the general materials of Colossians? Do you remember the general materials?
General materials again.
Ideological, geographical, biographical. Basically, it's not the structure; it's the content.
The content. It is going. From what I was reading, it would definitely fall more into the. I think the ideological, the ideas, how to live your life.
Right.
It talks about, it gives who Jesus is as far as him being deity and the invisible God, and there's a lot of explanation going on. Okay. Not so much, philosophy or anything of those other ones that we talked about, or story.
Okay. So yes, definitely, it's definitely ideological. Whenever you're dealing with an epistle, it's going to be ideological, pretty much. I don't know if there's any exceptions to that. Now, for major divisions, did you do anything to find the major divisions in your study?
I did, and I accidentally left the book home.
It's okay.
So I'll see if I can try to remember it. So you had the major division started at verses chapter 1. I need to go there because I can. Sorry, I had all this written down.
It's okay. I got the same thing. I just wrote an exegetical paper on Colossians.
I had 1 through 14 as, 1 through 2 as, the major, I guess major, these aren't minor, so I guess I need to work on that.
Well, no, go with your instincts. Give me your divisions and we can determine whether they're major or minor. So, what's your division?
Well, I had a total of 14 breakdown, I think it was.
14 divisions?
14 breakdowns, yeah, I broke it down by verse, that's what I'm saying.
Well,
I think there would be minor divisions.
I need your majors then.
Okay. Well, his introduction was 1 through 3, or 1 through 2.
All right, 1 and 2.
1 and 2 would be his introduction.
Okay.
You've got 3 through, I would see what breaks it down majorly, all the way down to chapter 2, verse 1. Would be another major.
So 1 to 3, 2 to 1?
Yep.
Okay, next?
Well, no, it would be end of chapter 1, so it would be, it'd be 129 would be the last.
Okay, 129?
Yep. And then starting from chapter 2, verse 1. Verse 15 would be the end of that one. So 2:1 through 2:15. And then 2:16 through 2:16 through 2. Let's see here, 23.
Okay.
3:1 through, I would say 4:1.
Alright.
Oh, I'm sorry, 4:6.
Okay.
And then 4:7 all the way to 4:18.
Okay. Is that it?
Yep. That's the end of the book.
Okay. Now, what the book, the main text that I use basically says you should try to look for 3 divisions in the book that you're studying. But it also says that your division should be limited by whatever the content of the book is, And so when you're dealing with a letter, an epistle, you have an introduction, you have a body and a conclusion, just like how we were taught how to write letters as school kids. So where would you say the introduction is?
Definitely 1 through 2.
Okay.
1 verses 1 through 2.
Now, you're
and then
right.
verses 4, 7 through 18 is definitely the conclusion.
Okay, you're right about the introduction beginning in 1 through 2. But that particular section, that's called a salutation. And I cannot spell that right, but
It's
that's
okay.
all right. A salutation. It's where you have the author, the addressee, you know, all that type of stuff, the audience. The introduction, it has a long introduction here, and this introduction includes.
Well, you got your Thanksgiving, yeah.
Yeah, you have your salutation, then you have a prayer, then you have Thanksgiving, and then the prayer,
Mhm.
and then it goes into a hymn.
The hymn or into dealing with Jesus as deity?
Well, the hymn starts in 115.
That's the hymns. Okay, so the Son is the image of the invisible God.
Yes.
That's a hymn.
It's a hymn. It's hymnic. I can explain that later on, but
Okay.
I'll come back
You'd
to
have
that.
to, because I don't follow.
All right. So basically, the introduction, I think Constable said it goes from 1 to 114. I think that's how he made up the division. And then he thought that the main body of the letters started in 115 and went further. I can't remember. I looked at several different outlines.
Well, he had the conclusion as 4, 7 through 18.
Yeah. Okay.
He definitely had it concluded there.
All right. Conclusion. Good. Or conclusion or closing and stuff.
Right.
He had chapter 2 set off by itself. Now there's some differences. He actually also included Geisler's outline. Did you see that?
I did not.
Okay, yeah, he said Geisler's outline. That's from the Bible Knowledge Commentary, and I didn't know he wrote on Colossians, but that was interesting that he did that. So, but this is what we got going on. We have our main structure of a letter. It's called a macro structure. It is our introduction, body, and conclusion, right? And there's other things involved in there that we could talk about, but you want to basically get an idea of the flow of the book and its major divisions. So typically, if you're going to just read the book, is that how you did it? You read the whole book, or?
Well, I read the whole book, and then I also read it twice.
Okay.
And then I focused in on the section of chapter or paragraph we were looking at.
Okay.
Chapter 3, verses.
So you did an overview reading.
Yeah, I wanted to see what the whole. I mean, it's a small book. First
Yeah,
of all.
we'll focus on the overview reading real quick.
Basically, I read through it twice, and on the second time that I went through, I had a piece of paper out with a pencil, and I was.
Well, what did you get out of the first reading? You read it through it twice.
It's like watching a movie for the first time.
Okay.
You know, where you're just kind of seeing it new, you really aren't analyzing anything. But the second time I go through it, that's when I really start looking at keywords. I try to look for transition words like therefore, or so that's, and those things, so I can kind of see, okay, well, there's something changed here. And I kind of try to write a sentence that would kind of best describe the idea of these different paragraphs, or different verses, from, like, for example, 3:1 through 4:6. I wrote instructions on your Christian living. That was one of the titles that I, sentences that I wrote for it. So I did it on the second set. Because what I think is helpful is when you're writing, anybody, it doesn't matter whether they were writing way back in the day or writing now, you're writing to get a truth across, or you're writing to communicate something. And so sometimes when you jump in the middle of the movie, right, you're like, the first question is, okay, what's happened previous to this, so I understand what's happening now. And so I figured, well, this is a pretty small book. It's not like Psalms, where if you get jumped into chapter 119, you don't have 118 chapters, and so after that, that's something you really can't do very well. But with Colossians, you can. And so I read all of it just to be able to see, okay, this is what he's been doing all the way up to this point. Because there's a logical flow to his method. I mean, Paul had a method to his madness whenever he wrote this. He just didn't, oh, that's a good idea, throw it in there, oh, that's another good idea, It is a little choppy in the sense that there's like all these different ideas kind of like presented, really quick. But I think it was, when you look at the background, the higher, when we get to the interpretive questions or the higher critical data, those are some of those things that we can see, well, this is why he presented it the way he did.
Okay. So, like, one thing that I do, like, I'll take Constable's outline or other people's outline, and all the major and the minor points are the only ones I keep, you know? And sometimes I'll erase their titles and just get their content, you know? And in Logos, I have what's called a Bible outline browser, and every book that I have that has outlines in it, it does comparisons to it, just like a paragraph and stuff, so that's pretty cool, but you can still do it on your own. And so, just, this is good enough for us to get going, right?
Mhm.
I mean, you're going to have differences, because that's the beautiful thing about Inductive Bible Study, is that what you see in the text should be changing how you understand the book. You know, and so, as we talked about last week, that if we start with someone else's outline or background information, then we've already introduced pre-understanding, bias, and all that.
Sure.
And that's fine. Just understand that you're taking that jump, so that your interpretation becomes more tentative. So, working with this idea of major divisions. The reason major divisions are very important is because when we get into talking about structural relationships, you'll see that if you identified the right divisions of the book, then you'll see key structural markers going on, or structural relationships going on. Like, one section will be focusing on a contrast or comparison, you know. And I already had work done because I had to write that paper. I had to, for my class, I had to take all the paragraphs and write the what and the why, basically the content, and the why deals with the issue of structure. And so I was able to, you know, sub-point it even more based off of that. But what I did, because when you get to structural relationships, it can be difficult. And the reason I'm gonna go ahead and move into that, there's tons of structural relationships. I've compiled about 180. And of course, other people would say that there's only about 22. But I'm including discourse, structure, all this type of stuff, you know, because I'm just building a database of that information. But I'm going to show you with one of the ones that I started from the beginning, and you know it by the palm of your hand. I'll try to write this. Okay? So whenever you're studying the scriptures, you look for things that are repeated. You look for things that are alike, unalike, repeated, alike, unalike, true to life, and what's the other one? Repeated, alike, unalike, true, alike. I can't remember the other one, and that's what's so bad. But this is from Hendricks, and I can get that information. But basically, what you're doing is when you're talking about structure, you're talking about comparisons, contrasts. You're talking about those ideas, commands. You're basically labeling what you're doing. And what I did this time is I went and I pasted my whole document, the whole book, into a document. And I just looked at the first words of each one of the sentences, right? Because we always criticize the the ones that divided up the verses. We criticize them and say, well, they're breaking the thought, you know. I mean, it wasn't intended to be broken up in verses and stuff like that.
Right.
But if you're doing an overview, one thing you can do is you can just look at how each sentence begins through the whole book. And you'll see ands and buts and all those and things like so that's and things like that.
Right.
And you're able to label that. Then you're able to go back and look at the paragraph and say, okay, this paragraph is emphasizing a whole bunch of commands. Or this paragraph is emphasizing a whole bunch of contrasts and things like that. And so you're able to build up your conclusion. Because whenever you approach these, you have two different ideas. You have what's called type theory, and you have trait theory. Okay? I first learned about this in psychology, but it's common. It's common discussion. A type, right? You meet a girl and she says, she's not your type, or whatever, you know? He's not your type. That idea there. So this has a concept already in mind, right?
Okay, yeah.
We hear the term stereotype. That's an overgeneralization. So these are patterns. Whenever you watch comedy, movies, or whatever, you have certain types of characters. Okay? So when you're looking at this, we talked about general materials a little bit, right? That's a certain type of writing. When we go into genre, we'll even go into more detail of that. Now, what happens is, whenever people study types, they're coming at their knowledge from extra biblical sources. Okay, I'm not spelling right, but so you have it coming from extra biblical, and what they do is they try to study. They study how other languages, how other cultures, how other literature expresses itself. Right? We can say, oh, this is romance, this is drama, these types of patterns and things like that. Of course, the danger with that is that whenever you're trying to be biblical, is that there's a stark difference between what is going on in the unbelieving world as opposed to what's going on in the Bible. Now, the Bible will use certain types or certain patterns or motifs, if you will, to express its ideas. But, so what's happened throughout history is, like, for example, there's comparative religion studies where people try to study the Epic of Gilgamesh and all these different documents and stuff from those ancient cultures and stuff like that. And then they try to make comparisons with the Bible. The problem is that it wasn't until after World War II that they were able to actually go in and study and do archaeological digs and evaluate a lot of the information that they had found. And they found out that the biblical stuff from the ancient Near East around that area right there, Jerusalem and stuff, had unique aspects to it that was not involved in there. And so the danger is that these people were taking a knowledge of the whole world, right? And they were saying, this is how it was. And they came with a lot of assumptions. So it goes back to that idea. Now, the idea of traits, so you have personality types. You've heard that, right? Extrovert, introvert, and all this. Well, then you have traits. Traits are like the details and stuff, the analysis. So the difference would be a type would be like a circle. But traits are dots. And if the dot ends up making a circle, then you have a circle. You understand?
No.
In other words, whenever you're doing the test, your personality test or whatever, and you see certain characteristics, they equal certain dots. All right? They fall in, and then they fall into certain patterns.
Okay.
You remember whenever we studied the Psalms?
Mm-hmm.
And we took the elements of the Psalms and the types of the Psalms,
yep.
And we basically reverse engineered it, and we said, rather than assuming that this is this type of Psalm, let's go through and analyze the elements to try to determine that. That's what we're talking about right here.
Okay.
And so inductive, that's what you're doing. You're looking at the information here to try to come to a conclusion.
Okay.
All right? So when we're talking about the structure relationships and stuff, like what I was talking about, breaking it down at the sentence level, just looking at how the beginning of each sentence, I usually embold the first part of each sentence. And then I go back through and I label each one. And so by doing that, you get a trait or a more inductive approach to labeling the structural relationships. Also, you cut yourself some time because you're already identifying structural relationships at a lower level than just as a major minor, But that's up to your style or the approach. But I mean, I had to do two things. I had to prepare for sharing this stuff, and two, I had to hone into my passage. And so that was another method that I used to bring that about. Okay. So in 1 and 2, what structural relationship would you say is going on there? Is there any?
Let me pull it. No. Well, other than, I guess, his signature name begins the gospel, Paul.
Okay.
So you kind of, I guess that's the way they used to start out with letters. Instead of, we sign them at the end of the day,
Uh-huh.
they signed them at the beginning. So you knew right from the very beginning who it was. So I guess that would be the structural marker, is the name who wrote the letter.
Okay, so, all right, so now you're going into semantic markers or semantic tags, where you
Sure.
start making up your own labels to describe what's going on.
Right.
Okay. So, I mean, like, we already have salutation. That's like a thing that you could also say establish an authority.
Sure.
There's different aspects of that. Okay, so what about 3? Looking at 3, how does 3 start?
Well, it says we always give thanks. We always thank God. So,
What would you call that? Just deal with the "we always thanks God" idea.
It's just,
Giving importance where importance is due, right?
Sure.
Yeah,
Humility.
it's an assertion.
Yeah.
He's basically, this is, as you're in the Greek, this is something he's saying in the indicative. He's asserting that this is true. He's not saying, hey, you need to give thanks to God, even though that may be implied.
Mm-hmm.
He's saying we always give thanks. The focus is on there. So we could say that we have assertion. Now, do you see any commands? Any commands through 3:1 through 29?
Yes. Let's see here. Let me see if I can find it. Well, I had it in my Bible. Yeah,
If it's that hard to find, what's that tell you? That the main function of this passage is not about telling you what to do, right?
well, so that you may live a life worthy of the Lord and please Him in every way.
That's purpose and result.
Okay.
So there are some purpose or result ideas involved in there, so we can include that. We can include purpose and result.
But no commands here.
All right. So that's important because Paul is basically beginning with his introduction. He gives an expanded thanksgiving that includes the prayer, and then he breaks off into this hymn. And I'll get back to the hymn, okay?
Well, that's just, I guess, here's a command. Do not move from the hope held out in the gospel.
That's how they translate it?
That's what they put here.
Let me see.
It's the NIV.
And what
If you
verse?
continue in
Your
your
faith, and do not move. But it's not a command.
It's not a direct. Okay.
It's a description
Okay.
almost. It's like saying, but yeah, it's implied though. It's indirect.
Okay.
What'd you say, Marie?
I said, what verse was he reading from?
23, right?
I hadn't got that far.
Yep, no, you're fine. Yeah, verse 23.
Thank you.
So, I would have to look if that's imperative, but it can be an implied idea there, but actually that's in a conditional sentence as
Yeah.
well.
It is.
If you continue in your faith, so it's telling you, if you continue in it.
Right. Yeah, then that would occur.
Which, that was one of the things that in my observations, I jotted down,
Mhm.
but we can talk offline.
Okay. Yes. Now, 2:1. How does 2:1 begin?
Go ahead, Marie.
I want you to know how much I am struggling for you, and add those to, was it?
Laodicea?
Yeah.
Laodicea, thank you. And for all of who have met me personally.
Okay, he says, I want you to know. Is that another assertion?
Mm-hmm.
Assertion, maybe desire?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, where's the commands in there?
I didn't see any.
Do not let anyone judge you by what you eat or drink.
Okay. So there is one command, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we'll just put 1 CMD. Okay. All right. Go to 2:16. How does 2:16 begin?
It says, well, that is how it is. Therefore, do not let anyone judge you by your drink. I guess I missed that one. So the command would be in 16, not in 15.
Oh, okay. So that's important, right?
Yep.
That's the whole shift going on right there.
Yep.
So it says therefore. Therefore is showing the inference.
Yep.
It's saying based on everything I've said.
Yeah.
So we need to put inference and command. How many more commands do you see in that section, 16 through 23?
I mean, more what?
Commands.
Like, do not let anyone who delights in his false humility and the worship of angels disqualify you for the prize.
What verse is that?
That is 18.
All right, so that's one more command. Is there any more?
No, that's it.
All right. So we're going to say 2 commands. Okay. 3:1. How's 3:1 begin?
So set your minds on things above. That's a command.
What's the so mean though?
What?
Your translation said so.
No, set your minds on things above.
Oh, it starts out that way?
Well, no, it says since then. That's how mine started.
Well, then would you need to say that part because
Sorry.
the point is that's a structural marker. And
Okay.
you're supposed to be reading the beginning of the sentence.
I thought you were looking for commands. My bad.
All right.
Since then is what
Okay.
it starts off with.
So that's another inference,
yes.
basically.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
You got 1 command, 2 commands, put to death. Therefore, whatever belongs to earthly nature. Do not lie to each other is 3.
Can we just say that this is where we start getting bombarded by commands?
Yes.
All right. So this is the command section. This is the command center, if you will.
We're not on chapter. Are we in chapter? Yeah, we are in chapter 3.
Okay. Now look at 4:7 through 18, and tell me if there's any commands in there.
Not really. He's just.
How does it begin?
It just says Titus will tell you all the news about me. He's a
That's
pure
verse 7, right?
Yeah. And I mean, my fellow prisoner Tychicus, in verse 10, as does Mark, the cousin of Barnabas. You receive your church by him. If he comes to you, welcome him. Jesus, who's also called Justus, also sends his greetings. Our dear friend Luke, the doctor.
Uh-huh.
You know.
There should be one where he tells, look at verse 17. I think
Yeah, well, it says, tell Archippus, see to it that you complete the ministry you've received
Now that's a
from the
command.
Lord. But it's a command to that specific guy.
Right, so it's a charge. It has a different focus. It's a charge, okay? As he's closing, he's charging them out. And he's really commending a lot of those brothers in his closing as well.
Mm-hmm.
So my point is that just by looking at the beginning of how that section begins, you can get an idea of the overall thrust. You see that?
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, there is a basis for your division. Because here he is, he's making an assertion, right?
Yep.
We give thanks. And he's talking about his prayer and all this stuff. And he has purposes, he has reason. He's intentional in what he's writing. And then he starts asserting other things, right? About the false teachers and what he don't want them to be ignorant. Expressing his desire that they be informed in all this.
Mm-hmm.
And then he starts going in and says, therefore. What is that command in 2:16?
Go ahead.
Let's go back. 2:16.
Mm-hmm.
Do not let anyone judge you by what you eat or drink.
Do not let anyone judge you. So evidently someone's judging them, right?
Somebody was doing that, yes.
Okay. So
Or somebody was putting commands on them, setting
yeah.
standards that weren't right.
okay. And so there's tons of stuff right here. Because this is what's called house codes, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Just like how, you've seen, I know you've seen the movie.
Seen lots of movies.
Yeah, I know. The Sound of Music.
Sure, yes.
Mm-hmm. Where the dude that's over everything, I don't know the names, I can't remember the names, but anyway, he tells her how the house is to be ran, right?
Yes.
And so he had expectations for everybody in that house,
Mm-hmm.
right? Well, in a house code, that's what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
the master would leave, and he would leave, someone who was a steward over the house, that would basically give commands and to handle things at whatever level you were. That means the child, the parent, the slave, the master himself, everyone was accountable. That's why this section right here is all on application. But all this doctrine is right here, right? Mm-hmm. All this about Christ, all these assertions, all these things that's going on right here. Mm-hmm. And then how he closes is very important, because basically what's going on here is Paul is saying, and he does this in his letters a lot, he says, I'm not asking you to do anything that I don't do myself.
Right. Oh, yeah.
He's the one that's being thankful in prayer,
Well, why don't you take a look at how he concludes it? I, Paul, write this. Let me get there. In verse 18 of chapter 4, it says, I, Paul, write this greetings in my own hand. Remember my chains. Mm-hmm. So he's even in prison, whether he's under house arrest or whether he's in the prison right now.
Right.
I mean, it's not like he's out free running around having a good time.
Right.
And he says we give thanks. I mean, that's pretty something to remark. He's in jail, but he's still giving thanks.
Right. So, and like I said, this is just in general. I mean, there's other ways that you could do this, and we can introduce more ideas for structural relationships. But you start thinking about the structure of your divisions, okay? Then you ask interpretive questions of your divisions.
Right.
So you would ask your what, who, where, all those types of questions about that particular section. Now the book that I use, it's more technical, it's more direct, it's more methodical.
What book are you talking about?
Inductive Bible Study by Bauer and Traina. So what you would do at that level is you would go in and you would ask questions about how this is functioning and why is it here? Why did he start this way? Why did he say this after that? Mm-hmm. We've kind of dealt with that in other lessons, but you see how that works together, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. So now your higher critical data, so you ask these questions of these structures. Now when you go and you ask those questions, you're not going to get the answers, right?
Sometimes you can.
Sometimes in the text you can find some.
But sometimes you can't, absolutely.
Right, and so when you go into the higher critical data, that's the background stuff. The problem is that you should look for, the problem is that many people jump to commentaries or background information at this point. But you should look for what the book says about the background. How does he describe the recipients? How does he describe the author? Mm-hmm. These types of things. How does he describe the false teachings and stuff like that? And you're able to put things together, then go into those resources. Mm-hmm. And then, also when you're reading, you want to know major impressions. Now keep in mind, this is observation of a book as a whole. This is a flyover. This is all tentative. This is just to get some scratches on paper, so that as you're studying the whole book, you're going to study the section next, right? After you do observation of the book as a whole.
Yep. And
you're going to go in more detail about that particular issue. And so you're going to be refining this as you go. That's what we're doing here. Mm-hmm. Because we're not assuming what Colossians is like. We want to connect all the dots that are in Colossians and come up with God's intended message, what's really going on there. And so that all relates to that aspect of it. Now, we need to say something about genre, which actually is part of the section about studying the divisions of a book.
Before you go into that, mm-hmm. So just for everybody else's benefit, should we start with the general materials, or can we, do we have to go 1 through 6? Is that because you labeled it like that? Is this a step-by-step approach?
If you want to be accurate, and the reason I say this is because this particular method, the way they present it, it's done in such a way that if you don't know the languages, you can get pretty accurate. If you don't know Greek, if you don't know Hebrew, you don't have a lot of fancy resources, but you just have your Bible, and you follow these steps, I recommend you follow the steps in ideal situations. Mm-hmm. But as we've talked about last week and even this week, there are things you have to do in the midst of ministry, in the midst of teaching, where you make adaptations. But this is the ideal order, because you're making an assumption, okay, it's ideological. I'm expecting to find an argument in this text, right?
Okay.
And then I'm expecting that whenever I see major divisions, that it's a shift in the argument.
Well, would you say, should somebody be reading the book as now, on big books, such as Psalms, such as Elijah, such as Isaiah, Jeremiah, those types of books? Still, before we go into these 6 steps, should somebody read through that whole book, maybe 1 or 2, if not 3 times, before they start making ideas? What is the book? General materials, major divisions, looking at those things.
You work with what you have time to do. Okay? The thing is that you read the book twice.
Mm-hmm.
You read it once to get an overall feel before you ever even done anything, and then the second time you started marking things down.
Mm-hmm.
That's fine. But all you're basically doing in this step is you're trying to get a feel for the material. I mean, this doesn't take long to go through. You can sketch this out within 15 minutes if you want. I mean, but it's just to get you started.
Okay, but if...
And you can make charts and outlines from this.
15 minutes seems pretty fast for a beginner.
On the Colossians book, yes.
Oh, okay, on the Colossians book.
Yes.
But we're talking, just as a whole, Charlie, just the whole, any book, if we apply this to any book of the Bible, do you think it would
Some books are going to take more time than others, but the thing is that understand that if you skip a step, you risk misinterpreting.
No, I don't mean skipping steps.
Right.
I just mean...
engaging different...
Engaging the length of time. So like if I had never read, if I didn't do those 2 readings, I'd be guessing at general materials. Unless I had some pre-knowledge.
But when you read the very first psalm, you automatically know it's a psalm, right? So don't you think a psalm should be called a psalm? So what type of general material would a psalm be?
Can you give me the general material again?
Ideological, geographical, biographical?
Historical, chronological. It would be, oh man, it's not geographical or biological. Might be historical.
There's all of that stuff's in it as elements.
Right.
I would suggest you treat them as ideological and trace the arguments and the structure. Okay.
Sure.
All right. It won't be exactly like a Paul's lawyer type style, but you can see him developing the case. But once again, Josh, is that you're dealing with you got the idea of the content of the book, the breadth of the book, and then you got your time. So basically what you have is you have time, and then you have breadth. Okay? And then so, it goes like that. In other words, the more time you have, the less breadth you're going to get. Or actually, it should be inverse. Sorry, I was horrible at statistics. You understand? If you don't have time, you're not going to be able to get to the breadth of the book.
Yep.
So you got to do gap stat methods, and that's why you would look at an outline, say, of Constable's notes or things like that. But ideally, a person should be studying a book as a whole, and they should be working through that book and preaching that book and teaching that book. Yeah, I know there's time for topical things and stuff like that, but if you're going to study the Bible correctly, you need to study the Bible the way it was delivered. You ever thought about that?
Right. He didn't write little pieces of each book.
It all came as one.
Right.
And the thing is, the people were so eager, or they knew it was good or bad, however you want to look at it, but they wanted to know what was in there.
Mm-hmm.
And so they took the time to digest it.
No, and there were letters.
Right.
In this particular case.
Yeah. So that kind of help a little bit in that idea?
I'm just asking so when people watch this video, they get an understanding of, okay, about how much time should I
Well, that goes into, whenever we get into the issue about a section, that's what I'm trying to say. On general materials, you're just trying to get a general feel of it. You're trying to say, okay, I get an idea of what type of materials it is. I get an idea about the division. I kind of see at the beginning of the sentences how much that is. And I got some questions about that.
Mm.
Now, I can look and I can read a little bit about the audience and recipient or whatever, and then I could note any other things that stick out to me.
Mm.
So basically what that's allowed you to do is that's allowed you to get a surface level understanding of the whole book. But it's not it's superficial in the sense that it's just scratching the surface. But doing this will give you more than most Bible studies will give you. Because you're already understanding the letter as it was being delivered. You know, if you were hearing the letter for the first time, if you were reading the letter for the first time, you would get an idea about how you would, okay, oh, you're bringing me a letter. Okay, I know it's ideological. I mean, you wouldn't say ideological, but you know he's talking about ideas. And you could follow, just like whenever you read a regular letter, major divisions. Okay?
Okay, sure.
So, all right. So, but whenever you get into genre, all right, now these are like, genre is like the, they're kind of like subtypes or we'll use the term type. So, whenever you're looking at, we talked about the hymn. Let's deal with the hymn.
Mm-hmm.
What comes to your mind when you hear the word hymn?
Theology based in a song.
Okay.
The feeling.
Theology based.
Yeah, so I guess you say wrapped in or
Yeah,
incorporated in a song.
It was wrapped?
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
WRAPP.
All right, all right. I was fixing to bust the hymn. All right. So, with that said, go to chapter 3 and go look at the section where it talks about songs.
Yeah, so it says, let the message of Christ dwell among you richly. This is verse 16 of chapter 3 of Colossians. So it says, let the message of Christ dwell among you richly, as you teach and admonish one another with all wisdom, through psalms, hymns, and songs from the Spirit, singing to God with gratitude in your hearts. And whatever you do, whether in word or deed, do it all in the name of the Lord Jesus, giving thanks to God the Father through him.
Okay, you read all that, but you didn't internalize all of it. Neither did I. So go back and start at the very beginning.
You want me to start at the beginning of the paragraph?
No, where I told you to
16.
read.
So it says, let the message of Christ dwell among you richly.
All right, now look where we're at. Is that 3:16?
Yep.
All right, 3:16. Let's put this up here. Okay.
As you teach and admonish one another with all wisdom through psalms, hymns, and
Slow
songs
down.
from the Spirit.
So he's telling you, let the word of Christ dwell within you richly. In other words, get it in you
Right.
and meditate on it.
That's a
all
little
idea.
bit, but a lot.
But he says, as you're teaching and admonishing, right?
What's admonishing mean?
Warning.
Okay.
Warning.
All right.
Okay? And then how does he say, how do you do it?
With wisdom.
With wisdom? Okay, what
With
else?
all wisdom.